All right, so this is going to be a recap of the GGP Chicago. This is the deck that I went with. It was Earth Aggro, pretty mostly standard, just a little bit of changes to what I specifically like. I ended up going 4-2 in the final standings. I was 10th, so I just kind of barely missed out on the top cut. One of the players that I lost against did make the top cut. He was actually ranked second. And then the other player that I lost against was right ahead of me at ninth place. He ended up losing his last match in the sixth round and got dropped out of the top eight. Had he won his sixth match and been in the top eight as well, I probably would have made top cut and been the eighth place person because only one person that was 4-2 was going to get into the top eight. That's how Swiss 6 rounds of Swiss goes, unless someone that's like 5-1 decides to drop out for some reason. So the decks I won against was an unconventional warrior deck by a new player that was in the first round. Um, a Panda Burn deck that had like a kind of a weird sideboard with like beast beaters. I've seen it before, but I never actually played against it. Anytime I play against Panda Burn, it's just always pretty much traditional burn. Then a library FTK deck that I won against, and then a traditional standard just net decked pretty much. I mean, not in a negative way, but you're just traditional standard warriors is what I won against in the sixth round. My two losses were against Chaos Turbo and Chaos Control. So we'll go over the deck right here. You can see at the very beginning here is that I'm only running two Goblin Attack Force. The reason being that I cut one of them is because you get to these situations a lot of times where if you're going second and your only playable monster is something like a Goblin Attack Force, where you open up, you get Goblin Attack Force and Gigantes. You can't summon Gigantes right away, so you have to go with Goblin Attack Force. And if your opponent T sets and you don't even have like a Nobuna cross out, you basically have to summon Goblin and just crash into whatever their set monster is. And no matter what, it's just such a terrible feeling. If it's like the worst case scenario is that it's Sangan or Sinister Serpent, because either of those are just a plus for your opponent. Even if it's like a Dekoichi, Magician of Faith, they're getting something back, they're plussing, and then you're going into defense mode right away, and you still don't have another monster to play unless you draw something that you can play that you can summon. You draw a Rhoda or another monster. So it's just a terrible feeling. Like you just lose all momentum basically off of turn one, and this is a deck that really needs to have like momentum or be applying pressure, and you're not going to apply pressure when you're crashing a Goblin Attack Force into a set monster on turn one. So that was part of the reason why I cut one of the Goblin Attack Forces. I basically just subbed it in for a Berserk Gorilla because it does give more pressure, I feel, in the duel. Obviously, it's bad because it does get walled by Spy. I've seen a lot of people talk about not liking Berserk Gorilla because it also is bad against Minecon, which a lot of people are main decking Minecons just because of how often they play against Chaos Turbo. I don't mind losing this guy to Minecon. A lot of times it's fine because it's just fueling for Gigantes. But I do really value the presence on board. And there's also some good things with it. I mean, it crashes into Blade Knights that are boosted, but gets over things like Kaiku. That was what I was thinking of. Yeah, Kaiku. Also, what is valuable about this is that it gives you another option to kill kinetic soldiers. In Earth Aggro deck, you do run like a lot of warriors. If you're running three goblins, three DD assailants, and then your other traditional like Rhoda targets like DD Warrior Lady, and I don't know, like I mean, you're not really going to be attacking with Mystic Sword unless it's face down, but you're running like a lot of warrior type monsters. So having a Berserk Gorilla that can kill a kinetic soldier is nice, especially also because like Kaiku isn't warrior, but it gets walled if it's a kinetic soldier in defense. The rest of these are all just standard. Basically, the rest of the deck is just all standard. Um, Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke, this is something that sometimes gets played and sometimes doesn't get played in Earth Aggro decks. I think it's absolutely necessary, specifically because I do have one of the Goblin Attack Forces cut, which is one of the cards that you use to kill Gravekeeper Spy. So the benefit is that this has the potential to kill both Gravekeeper spies, whereas Goblin Attack Force is only going to kill one and then get killed by something. Even if it's just like a Sinister Serpent or, an attack mode to Koichi, like your opponent will make sure that you don't get this back into attack mode to kill the other Gravekeeper spy, like even if they have to sack a monster, basically, like because that spy is just so valuable. I'm gonna take a quick drink here. So because I am only running two Goblin Attack Force, I do think that the Ninja Grandmaster is absolutely necessary. This is also a card that I just like in the deck. Some people don't like it in the deck. Some people do. I do. Like I said, it does have the potential to possibly kill both Gravekeeper spies, which is very valuable. Being a light attribute though is not valuable because having to Rhoda for something that's not Earth can be kind of risky at times, and leaves you in situations where you might brick with Gigantes and not being able to summon him. But also, what Ninja Grandmaster does well is also kill Spirit Reapers, which zombies isn't huge, but it does sometimes get played. And then I have seen decks like the Chaos Control and Goat Control have Spirit Reapers in their side deck that they will sometimes bring in along with like Gravekeeper Spies, or I will see Warrior players, try and play uh, Spirit Reaper because not only is it a defensive card, but it can basically, it has the same effect as Don Zalug, where as they just want to turn into attack mode and attack their opponent and try to rip cards from their hand. Even if they're in a situation where they don't have to worry about life points, then they can do that. So you do sometimes see the Spirit Reapers, and Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke is good at dealing with that and being a Rota target. We got the one Kaiku, just one. It kind of feels awkward sometimes with Kaiku. It really depends on like when you draw him and like what the situations are when you draw him. Like if you have like a Nobleman of Cross out that you can play and then try to attack directly and try to banish like some darks, and because usually lights most of the time like your opponent's gonna be okay on lights because all they have to do is draw one Thunder Dragon and then they've got three lights and you're never really gonna be able to banish all of them. But also just the effect that being able to block banishing so that they can't bring out the chaos monsters. One bad thing too is that it is only 800 defense, or no, 700. So there are a lot of monsters in the deck that are weak to Tsukiyomi. So you got the goblins, obviously, the Berserk Gorillas, and then both the Ninja Grandmaster and the Kaiku. So it does leave you vulnerable to a lot of weaknesses to Tsukiyomi, along with Breaker and Tribe Infecting Virus that are standard. And then the rest of it is just all pretty much standard. Three Dust Tornado, a lot of times is only running two Dust Tornadoes in Earth Aggro, but I do enjoy playing three. I sometimes do wonder if I'm playing a little bit too much back row destruction because that's three Dust Tornado, one MST, one Heavy Storm, and then one Breaker. Breaker on itself is just a good monster, so you can kind of not count it, but that's basically five back row destruction cards. But the good thing is too that if you hit something like Mirror Force or Torrential Tribute, like you get so much value out of that Dust Tornado because those are really momentum breaking cards. If you lose like two monsters to a Mirror Force or a Torrential Tribute, it's going to set you back. But if you do end up picking it off with a Dust Tornado, then it's really good. Three Trap Dust Shoot. I was on two before, and then I just saw how good performances were with main decking three Trap Dust Shoot. Not even in just like aggro decks specifically, but like I think AJT won a tournament where he was main decking three Trap Dust Shoot and a Chaos Turbo deck. So I bumped it up to three, and I think I'm just going to be leaving it at three. It just provides so much value. It's like one of the best performing cards that I had in the deck, in the main deck for the GGP. And you do sometimes brick with it later on in the duel, but the value you get like with hand knowledge on like opening with a trap dust shoot is just so valuable. And then the side deck, Jinzo, like I said before, this used to be Mobius, mostly because I was thinking about just having it for the burn matchup, because Mobius is a little bit better for the burn matchup because it can kill level limit area B along with Gravity Vine and basically just open up kind of a floodgate so that you can get in for damage and try to push and not have to sit behind the level luminary being gravity bind. Whereas Genzo, it can't do anything against level luminary B, but it does shut off all traps, which the traps are like the burn damage. So if they can't summon out Ojama tokens, then they can't use their panda to kill things. And if Jinzo's the only monster out in the field with 1500 defense, Panda is only going to get boosted to 1300 attack and can't kill it. So it's a little it's a little awkward sometimes playing against Panda, but like you just cut off all damage basically. So even if you're having to sit behind a level luminary B in defense, you can still basically like prolong the game and be in like a good situation. It is also awkward too because it cuts off your dust tornadoes. So if you have Jins out in the field and there's a level limit in area B and then you draw a dust tornado, you can't play your dust tornado. It's kind of awkward, but like Panda Burn's not a deck that I really worry about. The main reason for Jinzo being in the side deck is for specifically Warriors. Warriors have gotten to the point where they're playing anywhere from 13 to 15 trap cards. When I was had Mobius in the side deck, I never brought it in against Warriors because it was such a huge risk playing it. If you sacrifice a monster and then bring out Mobius and it gets Solemn Judgment and the effect gets negated, it's just such a huge loss. Whereas with Jinzo, if that same thing happens, it's not as big of a loss because you are running both the Call of the Haunted and the Premature Burial. So if you bring back Jinzo with either of those cards, you immediately get the value back of cutting off all trap cards. Whereas if you bring Mobius back with either of those cards, you get a 2400 beater, but all their back row is still alive. So you bring Mobius back with a Call of the Haunted and the attack, and then you run right into a Sakuretsu armor. Like, whereas with Jinzo, you Call the Haunted it back, attack, Sakuretsu armor does nothing, and now they've got to deal with Jinzo again. Three King Tiger Wangus. This is just standard. Also, this is probably one of the best performing cards. This is the best performing card out of my side deck. When I played against the Warrior player in games 2 and 3, I summoned Jinzo both times and just won with Jinzo. He had nothing that he could do to stop it. In game 2, he actually drew a Sakuretsu armor and had nothing in his hand other than that, and then set it. And so I went through my turn and attacked directly and all that stuff. He couldn't stop it. The next turn, he draws Tribe Infecting Virus, and then the Sakuretsu armor that he set is doing nothing, but he can't summon Tribe because he has nothing to discard for Tribe. And then the next turn, I just won. And he too told me about it. It was like, yeah, I misplayed. I should have kept the Saku in my hand, but because really there was no reason to set it because there's nothing that no bluff was going to make me not attack with Jinzo and like my other monsters because I know that Warriors don't run traditionally like Book of Moon, and even if they did, like who cares? Like you Book of Moon my Jinzo face down, and but Mirror Force my Jinzo's in face down defense position. Who cares? Like it's nothing that I was gonna like worry about. Sometimes I guess they play Book of Moon if they play in like Moth, I guess, but traditionally they don't. And then in game 3, same thing. I played Jinzo and he couldn't stop it, and I just kept won with Jinzo. This is mandatory. The King Tiger Wangu. This is for basically control decks. It's the biggest one, but it also works really well against Panda Burn, and then things like Reasoning Gate Turbo just cuts off their tokens. This is optional, but it's just really good against Panda Burn. So it's such a huge card. There'll be times actually where I'll play or I'll summon out Amazoness Archer and actually burn the Panda Burn player down with it because you do 2400 damage, like because you contribute Amazoness Archer herself. So hypothetically, they have 3 Ojama tokens out in the field. You normal summon this, kill two Ojama tokens. That's 1200 damage. Kill the other Ojama token and this card. That's another 1200. So 2400 damage. You can just win the game off with that. This comes in for Warriors. I subbed this out for Mystic Swordsman level 2. Just really good. This will come in when I'm playing most of the time just Chaos Turbo. I'll maybe think about it if I'm playing against like Chaos Control, depending on like they usually don't run as many monsters, so I don't feel like I need the second one. Well, I should say Go Control. Chaos Control does run more monsters, so like yeah, I'll bring it in against Chaos Control as well. I also like this a lot more than Mind Control. You can see I only have one Mind Control, so I'll swap out like one of the Smashing Grounds for a Mind Control. But I like Mystic Swordsman level 2 just a lot more. Um, there's just so many bad situations where you Mind Control, a blind set monster, and if you don't have like information off a trap dust shoot, that ends up being like a Sinister Serpent or a Sangan, or a tribe infecting virus set in defense or something like that. It's just something stupid, and like you just go so far negative. Whereas with the Mystic Swordsman level 2, like even if you do hit like a Serpent or a Sangan, like you still have the pressure of Mystic Swordsman level 2 that means that they can't just set a monster next turn. Like they have to deal with Mystic Swordsman. Like they have to do something to kill it. Whereas if you whiff like on a Mind Con, there's no pressure on them. It's like, okay, well, they just get their monster back and that's it. There's obviously also the chance that you can benefit with Minecon by getting like a Moth or Dekoichi. Also, the same thing is like I don't like running GK Spy. I know some people will put two GK Spies in their side deck for like games against like Warriors and maybe even sometimes against Turbo if they're playing the Minecon so that they get better value out of the Minecon. But I don't like GK Spy in this deck at all. So if I hit a GK Spy as well, like it goes into attack, but then they just put into defense next turn. So they lose out on the flip effect, but they still have a 2000 defender. I like Mystic Swordsman a lot more. Walk, this is just for burn and in time if I feel like I need it. Brain Control, this is to combine with Jinzo mostly. It's also good in the aggro mirror because you a lot of times can just take a monster from your opponent. Like they're playing Warriors, they're playing Solemn Judgments, they're you know paying 4,000 life points. You can just summon out a monster, take their Blade Knight, summon out Berserk Gorilla, bring control their Blade Knight, attack with both. If they don't have anything to stop it, that's 4,000 damage right there. So you can just really push for damage with brain control. The same thing with like if any deck is running Solemn Judgment. It can also just catch people off guard. So I like it just at one. It kind of underperformed, but it was mostly based because of situations. This is my one tech thing is that I really like compulsory evacuation device. This is very specifically for goat control. For one, it's just well, I guess chaos control as well. It's a good out to Thousand Eyes Restrict, obviously, but then also creature swap, which is really annoying. Is that you can, you know, if they play creature swap, depending on what the situation is, if they have goat tokens and you only have one monster, then you can just bounce your monster back to your own hand, and then you don't have to give it over to them. It's just one monster for one monster, so they have like a mist or like a tomato, and you have a monster. You can just bounce their tomato back to their hand, and now they have to resummon it, and they lose out on their creature swap. So it makes this not like a -1, which it normally is. You can even bounce like Goblin Attack Force so that you can attack with it again if it's a defense and about to get killed or something, depending on what the situation is. This is also just a really good utility card. So, like I said, I went up against Library FTK. I brought this in for Library FTK because if they go for that FTK and they start stacking up those counters on the library, if you have this set, you can just wait for them to get the two, and then when they play the third spell card, just chain it and bounce library back to their hand, and that will really fuck up their rotation. So it's like really good for rogue stuff. Reasoning Gate Turbo, and if they try to monster gate a token, just bounce the token. If they get something out that's like with Cyberstein or something, like they bring out what is it, like Gatling Dragon or something like that, you can just yeet it out. If they have like, I mean, Jinzo, it won't work because it stops traps, but Fusilier, something like that, like a big beater with Fusilier, you can use it on that. So it's nice against rogue stuff. These are just for aggro, basically against Warrior or the mirror match. This is something that I did have main decked, and then I was kind of looking at some of the other decks for Earth Aggro, and I saw a lot of them were uh, side decking this card, and I decided to try to use it or to try to do the same. I'm not entirely sure if I like it in the side deck or not. Like the one thing is that like a lot of times torrential tribute can feel pretty bad with this deck just because of how much you usually commit to the board with monsters, because this is an aggro deck, so you are trying to kind of push pressure with damage on board. So a lot of times you do have multiple monsters, and then something like a chaos sorcerer gets summoned out. It feels bad going, basically 3 for 1, where you're killing 2 of your monsters and using torrential tribute to kill one chaos sorcerer. So it does feel bad in those kind of situations. But then it's also like a nice card to have against GK Spy, which GK Spy is just such a issue for this deck where, if you have this set and then you're attacking to a GK Spy, now they got 2 GK Spies out in the field. If you do get a situation where your opponent just normal summons something like a tribe or a breaker to try to hit something in your back row, you can just flip this over and get rid of those GK Spies. It's good against the aggro matchup too, just because it's chainable or unsummon. Well, not chainable. I shouldn't say that, but it you can use unsummon. So you get into those simplified game states where everybody's just got like one card on the field and they summon something, you just kill it right away, and then that leaves them open so that if you draw a monster, you can just summon it and attack directly. So I'm not entirely sure. I think I like it better in the side deck, but I might try to play around with it in the main deck more. Like I said, I do have a lot of back row destruction, so I can easily see myself just taking out a Dust Tornado to main deck this again, and I can even just put the Dust Tornado and just swap them, basically. Easy swap. That was just the overrun. Basically, I think Jinzo is better than Mobius for the side deck. I think he just has a better impact, and he has better utility. He works better in more matchups than Mobius is. That's one thing I do really like about my side deck choices, is that a lot of my choices are good for multiple matchups. It's not just specifically just for one matchup. So this is good against Turbo. This is good against Panda Burn, and then a bunch of rogue stuff. This is good against a bunch of good things. Basically, a lot of the control matchups, which are the worst matchups for this deck, and then a lot of rogue things. This is just specifically for Burn, though. This is pretty much just specifically for Warriors. This has a lot of good uses against random things, and then these are just for any aggro deck, and this is for any trap heavy deck. So you get a lot of utility out of the side deck here, and it was one thing that's not really talked about a lot with Earth Aggro, is that it does have a lot of good matchups under rogue things just because of how versatile you can be with your side deck. King Tiger Wangu is like just one of those cards that like it does really well against a lot of other non-traditional like non-chaos turbo decks like Ritual Chaos. Manjus are 1400, Relinquished is 0 attack. You can just cut off that whole engine with a King Tiger Wangu. A lot of times they run recruiters too or something like, and like Recruiter Chaos or Return Chaos will run recruiters. You can just have King Tiger Wangu out there stopping all those summons. So that's just one thing that like Earth Aggro I do think feels like it does well against like just rogue decks that some other decks don't do as well with. But that'll be the end of my recap.